And let me thank the Meskwaki people for allowing us to use this beautiful facility. Let me apologize for being late. We just got a big new bus. It is a beautiful bus, but it goes slower than the cars we usually drive. But it is wonderful to be with you. And let me just make a couple of points, and we'll open it up to our panel and to your questions and your comments. We are running for president for two reasons. Number one, it is absolutely imperative that we defeat Donald Trump, the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. You know, in America, we can disagree about this and we can disagree about that, but I don't think that there is disagreement that we should not have a president who is a pathological liar. You know, when you turn on the television and your kids are watching television, you want to know that your president, whether you agree with him or her or not, is telling the truth. Trump most often does not tell the truth. You want to have a president who is running an honest administration. His administration is one of the most corrupt administrations in the history of this country. You want to know that you have a president who is bringing us together, not dividing us up based on the color of our skin or where we were born or our religion or our sexual orientation. And that is, we need a nation in which our people come together and are not being divided up. But the other point that what this campaign is about, and why I'm running for president, is not just to defeat Trump. I'm running for president because we need to transform our economy and have a government which works for all of us, not just wealthy campaign contributors. And what we have today, as I think all of you know, is we are living in a nation where the people on top, millionaires and billionaires, are doing phenomenally well, while ordinary people are working 2 or 3 jobs in order to take care of their families. We got half of our people living paycheck to paycheck, millions of people working at starvation wages. So our job together is to create an economy that works for all, not just the people on top. And when we talk about transforming our economy, I don't have to tell anybody here about the situation regarding the Native American people in this country. When we talk about America today, we are talking about our life expectancy going down, and yet Native Americans have a lower life expectancy than the general population. We are talking about 87 million Americans with no health insurance, and yet that percentage of uninsured is higher for Native American people. We are talking about 40 million people living in poverty. The poverty rate for Native American people is way higher than the average. When we're talking about the epidemic of suicide and alcoholism and addiction, it is high all over this country. It is higher for Native American people. So here is a promise that I make to you that comes from my heart, and I have no hesitation in telling you that we will carry out this promise. For much too long, going back to the very first years of this country, the Native American people have been lied to, treaties have been broken, land has been taken, and even right now, we're seeing large corporations invading Native American territory in order to excavate for minerals or for oil or for whatever it will be. As President of the United States, we will not be informing the Native American people what is happening. They will be part of the decision-making process. We will together, with your help, address the healthcare crisis. We will together address the educational crisis. We want our kids to stay in school. We want our kids to be able, if they have the desire, to get a higher education, to learn the trades that they need in order to do well in life. We want to make sure that all women, and Native American women in particular, are safe and are not sexually harassed or raped. We want to make sure that Native American law enforcement officials have the power to do what is necessary to protect their own people. So we've got a lot of work in front of us. And what this campaign is about is saying that if you work 40 hours a week, you should not live in poverty. You should earn a living wage at least $15 an hour. What this campaign is about is saying that women should receive equal pay for equal work to men. What this campaign is about is saying that all of our kids, regardless of their income, if they have the desire and the ability, should be able to get a higher education, because we're going to make public colleges and universities tuition free. What this campaign is about is ending the international embarrassment of the United States being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all people as a human right. And together we will pass a Medicare for all single-payer program. And there is another issue where it is terribly important, not just that I help the Native American community, but the Native American community is going to have to play a leadership role in this country. Anyone who tells you that climate change is not real, is not caused by human activity, is not already causing devastating problems in our country and all around the world, is lying to you and is doing a terrible disservice to the children and future generations. What has gone on in this country for too long is we have ignored the environmental impact of what we do. And we are seeing the results right now. Some of you may have noticed in Australia, Australia is now on fire. California recently, wildfires all over the state. We're seeing unprecedented level of drought, rising sea levels, the warming of the ocean, the killing off of millions and millions of fish, species after species being killed. What we need is to understand not only that climate change is real, but we need to show a respect for the environment that this country has not shown for a very, very long time. And in that regard, young people all over the world are looking to the Native American community for leadership. Because what we have learned from the culture of the Native American people is an understanding about sustainability, that you can't simply wipe out animals. You can't destroy the water for short-term gains if you want your kids and grandchildren to live good lives. Native American people have educated our country. And once again, we're going to need your leadership to show this country and maybe the world about how we go forward respecting the environment, to understand that we are all part of nature, that we can't destroy nature and expect to live good lives. So I want to thank you again for inviting me to be here with you. I'm happy to hear what's on your mind, any questions you have, any concerns you have, what role you would like to see a President of the United States play in terms of any issue. So thank you all very, very much. Okay. Danielle, did you want to say a few words? Or speak for as long as you want, as a matter of fact.
Well, thank you for coming back to the Meskwaki Settlement, Senator Sanders. We greatly appreciate you thinking about us still. A lot of these people here are advocates, and in the last caucus that we had 68 people that turned out for the caucus for you and 20 for Hillary Clinton. And that was a pretty big turnout, especially for not having a caucus here for a while. So thank you for pushing that education-wise and informing the people about that kind of stuff. One issue I'd like to be brought up about is the Violence Against Women Act that protects women and the acts of violence against them. That also pertains to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women Act. As you know, we have Rita Papaki, who's been missing for 5 years from the Meskwaki Settlement now. And as you well know, Molly Tibbetts, who only lives 30 miles from here, was found within 30 days when she was lost. So there's a discrepancy of the equal value of Native Indigenous women in our country as opposed to all other women. So I would like you to consider making it all equal for all women, even future generations, these young girls, because that's what I worry about. If any one of us is lost, who's going to look for us? And what it looks like, nobody will look for any Indigenous woman. So that's something that has to be brought up to light, because a rising tide raises all ships, and that's what we have to start be considering and worrying about are the people. And one aspect is the women. We breathe water in our mother's womb before we breathe air on earth, and so that's how we incorporate the earth within all our teachings. We have an immersion program here of 3-, 4-, and 5-year-old programs where they teach the culture and language, the curriculum in the language, because we understand language is our identity, and every tribe has to bring back their language and revitalize it. Because as we see in the social work industry, you have to protect the identity of the child to make sure they go on living in a good way for the rest of their life. So providing them with the tools for those kind of opportunities is why I'm choosing Bernie Sanders as my candidate for president. To make education free for everybody in the United States, which would be community colleges or universities, would be a great impact to the economic development of this nation. Because as you can see, our elders are retiring and dying off from these trade industries also. So even if they don't go to college, the blue-collar industry trades are such as important. Here at the school, we've implemented an apprenticeship program where we do HVAC, electrical, and plumbing industries, where they teach them in carpentry apprenticeship program. So those jobs are just as important as going to college. And the healthcare industry, we have a lot of elders that are on pills and opioids, and the opioid addiction is a big factor amongst Native communities. And so that's something that mental health and the health of the whole human body is what needs to be looked at as a holistic view, not just working with the pharmaceutical industries, but also the homeopathic industries. In conjunction, them two can work together and make a lot of people more healthier. But we understand that the United States wants us to be sick. That's the only way they make a profit off of us. So, if there's one way we can do about that, the health industry would be free health care, and that's what Bernie supports. So on February 3rd, there will be a caucus on the Meskwaki Settlement, and I encourage all of you guys to participate. If you don't know what it's about, find out what it's about and get involved. We'll be looking for volunteers for that also. Thank you very much. I am kind of worried for who will be, if Donald Trump gets in again. What I worry about is the younger generation. They don't know how to handle it, but one way to combat the discrimination and prejudice in the whole country is to teach the proper history of how this United States came to be and the history of the indigenous people and what happened to us. We have to have that uncomfortable conversation, because look at where we are now. We can't look past 1492 and what happened to all the people prior to that. And so that's why we're stagnant now in our racism and discrimination via Trump and his administration. So teaching the proper history in all public schools about the indigenous people ensures that our younger generations will not be discriminated against. Our elders faced it a lot when they went to residential schools, when they, went out into their communities, tried to look for jobs and stuff like that. All they did, do not waste that in vain. All the struggles that they went through, all our ancestors, what they passed on for and fought for, they cleared the way for us a little bit. Now it's our turn to make sure that our younger generation is not discriminated against, and that is teaching the proper history in our public schools. So with that, that's all I would like to say, and I thank you guys for all coming here. It's the second time he's come back, and thank you.
Danielle, thank you so much for touching on so many important issues. And I think the point that you made about teaching truth, not only in schools, but throughout our country, you know, there's a very profound saying that the truth shall make you free. And there are a lot of things in American history that we should be very proud of. There are a lot of things that we should not be very proud of. And it's important that we discuss it. How this country from day one treated the Native American people, something not to be proud of. Slavery, not to be proud of. All the forms of discrimination that have taken place, not to be proud of. So we do better when we're honest and we talk about what has happened, and in fact, the truth will set us free, I think. Let me ask, all right, is anybody else, did you want to say a few words?
Hope. My name is Marley Whitefish, and I was born and raised on the Meskwaki Settlement, and I guess I support Bernie because he's for affordable or free college for everyone, and I'm a college student. I go to Kirkwood Community College, and I know a lot of people who I guess I know a lot of people who are like struggling to pay for college, and they're like really struggling just to get by. And I don't think that should happen if they just want a better life for themselves. And I support free Medicare for all, because I know people who are like so in debt in like medical bills and stuff, and all they want to do is just be healthy, and they're just so in debt. And yeah, I didn't really have anything planned, so I'm kind of flustered. Yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you.
All right, let me thank the panelists. There's nothing that any of you said that I don't strongly agree with. And there's a lot that we haven't discussed. All right, so fire away. Anybody have any comments or questions? Yes, we got, Misty, we got a microphone there, ma'am. Stand up, and we will get your mic. If you can just give us your name, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Deb. This is second time meeting you. I met you over at that convention.
Deb, grab the mic there.
My name is Deb, and I met you over at the convention center last time you was here. So nice meeting you again. And in response to your going to Kirkwood, I worked my way through college, so having free tuition is not an excuse not to go to college. I worked and I attended. I went full time. Plus I did overtime. Plus I maintained a home. Second of all, if you're offering free health, free education, how are you going to do that without raising taxes? Because I'm tired of paying taxes.
Good. All right, good question. In terms of medical, how are you paying for it right now? Is it free? Your employer's paying for it. But you know what? The average worker in America is paying $12,000 a year out of his or her own pocket. Employer is paying $14,000. We are spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. Do you know that? Twice as much as compared to the Canadians or Europeans, and yet we have 87 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. We have 30,000 people who die each year because they don't get to a doctor when they should. We have 500,000 families that go bankrupt because of medically related bills. And we have God knows how many people whose credit scores are shot because they are late in paying medical bills that they cannot afford. All right? We have a healthcare system which, in my view, is designed not to provide quality, cost-effective care to all people, but it's designed to make huge profits for the drug companies and the insurance companies. That's the current. And I will remind people, and I want you all to think about it, we pay by far the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. I think Danielle touched on that issue. A lot of folks out there, not just in Indian country, but all over this country, they are sick and they go to the doctor. Doctor writes out a prescription. They cannot afford to fill that prescription. Last year, I took a trip from Detroit, Michigan to Windsor, Ontario to buy insulin for people who are diabetic. Anybody here dealing with diabetes? All right, you use insulin? Okay. Canada, the same product that you probably buy here in the United States is sold for 1/10 of the price. And that's because you have a pharmaceutical industry that is not only greedy, but they are corrupt. All right? I think when people get sick and they need medicine, they should be able to get that medicine to keep them alive and to ease their pain. So I apologize. In my view, health care is a human right. All of us should be entitled to it. We're going to improve the Indian health service, but we're also going to give people the option of doing Medicare for all if that's what they want. Okay, other questions or comments? Sir.
Hello, Senator Sanders. My name's Uriah, and I just wanted to say, first, thank you so much for the issues that you've been raising in this campaign and in your 2016 campaign, and for changing the issues that the country is discussing. I was a delegate for you in 2016 from North Carolina, and so it's really, I'm really excited to talk to you today. Currently, I work as a financial aid counselor at a college in Minneapolis, and I wanted to ask you about that. Every day I see students coming in and mortgaging their futures, taking out loans, trying to afford a better life for themselves, and they're putting themselves deeply in debt.
Right.
And that's obviously a huge problem that needs to be addressed. And you're trying to address that in your campaign.
Yep.
The specific question I wanted to ask is, why do you think it's so important to make sure that debt relief is universal instead of means tested?
Good. Very good. All right, thanks, Uriah, for the work you're doing. What Uriah is saying, in case people didn't hear, he works as a financial counselor at a college in Minnesota. Yeah. And he's seeing people are going in debt every single day. 100+ years ago in the state of Iowa and around the country, leaders made a very important decision. And this is what they said. They said they were sick and tired of seeing children of the rich being able to get a good education, while working class kids and poor kids were forced to work on farms or maybe in factories. And 100+ years ago, what those working people said is, we want our children to be able to get a free public education. And by the way, Iowa was one of the leaders in that effort. The world has changed over 100+ years. So when we talk about free public education, in my view, it is not good enough to talk about first grade through 12th grade. Technology has changed. The global economy has changed. When we talk about free public education today, it must include making public colleges, universities, and trade schools. Your point, not every kid has the desire or the ability to go to college. They want to work with their hands. They want to be plumbers. They want to be carpenters. Those are good and important jobs. They deserve that training as well. So, number one, in the year 2020, all Americans, and not just young people, have the right to get all of the education they deserve in order to succeed in their lives. Number two, right now, you have 45 million Americans dealing with student debt. 45 million. Anybody here dealing with student debt? All right? And sometimes that debt can be very oppressive. You could be dealing with $50,000, $100,000 a year, and you're not making any income, or you're not making the kind of income you need to be able to pay off that debt in a reasonable period of time. What our campaign is about, without apologies, is a campaign and an administration which represents working people, not just the wealthy. If you remember, 11 years ago, United States Congress, against my vote, bailed out the crooks on Wall Street who destroyed our economy. You all remember that? 2 years ago, Trump and his friends decided to give over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% and large profitable corporations. If this country could bail out the crooks on Wall Street, give tax breaks to billionaires, we can cancel all student debt in America. Now, you ask me the question, well, why all? And the answer is the overwhelming majority of people who carry that debt, by definition, are working people. They're not wealthy. But I happen to believe, whether it is Medicare for all, whether it is Social Security, I happen to believe in universal programs, which does not say, okay, you make $85,000 a year, you're eligible. You make $86,000 a year, you're not. Oh, you lost your job last year, you're now eligible. You made more money this year, you are no longer eligible, whatever it may be. What I believe is you have universal programs and you pay for them in a progressive way. All right, right now, if you are a billionaire and you want to send your kid to a local public school, you can, and that's appropriate. But I believe that the billionaires should start paying their fair share of taxes so we adequately fund education and health care and the needs of our people. Yes, ma'am. Let's get our mic. Bill, got a mic? Give us your name and hold that mic close to your mouth, please.
Sylvia Brown. I was wondering, what is your views on the cannabis laws? I noticed that some states are making it legal and some are not. And I noticed that the states that are making it legal are really doing well in the taxes on that. Is this going to be something you're going to address?
Well, Danielle mentioned that I was here 4 years ago, right? Wasn't in this room, was another, yeah. And 4 years ago, before it was a popular thing to say, Sylvia, you know what I said? I said we should legalize marijuana in every state in this country. And do you agree with me? All right. And here is the young, but we don't want her doing marijuana quite yet. All right, and your point, but I want to take off on that. Right now, we have a federal Controlled Substance Act in Washington, which says that marijuana is the equivalent, it's on the same schedule as heroin. That does not make any sense to me. We all know that heroin is a killer drug, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure that people do not get involved with heroin. You can argue the pluses and minuses of marijuana, but marijuana is not a killer drug. So to answer your question, we will make marijuana legal in every state in this country. Number two, we're going to do more than that. We are going to expunge the records of those people arrested for possession of marijuana. And I'll tell you what else we're going to do. And this is not an idea that came to me. I got to admit, other people told me this idea. Sylvia says, and she's right, that marijuana is becoming legal in state after state after state. It's legal in California, it's legal in Nevada, and so forth. Who are the people who are making the money out of the legalization of marijuana today? By and large corporations. I want to see marijuana legal in every state in this country, but I don't want to see a handful of large corporations being the ones who make the profit. And I'll tell you why. Because the war on drugs has been a disaster for minority communities all across this country. So if you look at the people who are in jail, not just for drugs, but often for drugs, you're going to see African Americans, you're going to see Latinos, and you know what else you're going to see? Native Americans. Correct? Okay. So what I believe, again, not my idea, other people gave me the idea. They said, you know, if you're going to legalize marijuana, why don't you make it easier, help minority communities, African American community, Latino, Native American community profit from the legalization of marijuana. And in our criminal justice proposal, that is what we do. We have billions of dollars designed to help people at the grassroots level create businesses by which they can profit, not just a handful of large corporations. All right, so that's kind of what our plan is. Thank you. Okay, I see a gentleman right up here, sir.
It's an honor to be here. My name is Steve Scott. I work for the tribe here. I run a tax return service through the AARP tax aid. And 2017, Trump signed into law the job cut in the tax reduction. And that was basically, you know, like a socialism program. And it kind of eliminates the middle class. What are your,
Good.
How are you going to address that?
Well, when Trump campaigned in Iowa and around the country, you all remember what he said about taxes? What he said is, I will sign a tax law that benefits working families and the middle class, not the rich. You remember him saying that? I will not shock you when I tell you that Trump lied. The tax law that he signed, turns out that 83% of the benefits over a 10-year period go to the top 1%. That is not the kind of tax legislation we need in this country. We need tax law that helps working families, lower income families, the middle class, not the 1%. But you raise an issue. You know, people say, well, how are you going to pay for the programs you advocate? And I will tell you, right now in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have had since the 1920s. We have 3 people in America who own more wealth than the bottom half of American society. You got that? 3 people own more wealth than the bottom 160 million people. Over the last 30 years, the top 1% have seen a $21 trillion increase in their wealth. Bottom half have seen a decline in their wealth. Today, the average worker is not making a nickel more in real inflation accounted for dollars than he or she did 45 years ago. So you know what that tells me? That tells me the time is now to tell the wealthy and large corporations that they will, in fact, start paying their fair share of taxes. Okay, I see a hand way in the back there.
Hello, Mr. Sanders. I'd like to say, first of all, that I'm a big fan. Everything that you say is something that I believe in. My question for you is, how are you going to help our environment when it comes to the like pipelines and all the destruction that the big corporations are now doing?
I believe that in terms of pipelines, we have to look at it within the context of climate change. And I believe that if you look at the crisis facing this country and the world, we have got to move as quickly as we can away from fossil fuel to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. So to answer your question, number one, we will strongly oppose any corporation moving into Indian country who think with impunity they can destroy the water in that community by just excavating for minerals. We will oppose pipelines of fossil fuel because we got to move away from fossil fuel, not encourage more production of fossil fuel. So to answer your question, we are going to move as aggressively as we can through what we call a Green New Deal. People familiar with the Green New Deal? And what a Green New Deal says is that we've got to stand up to the fossil fuel industry and tell them that their short-term profits are not more important than the future of the planet. We are talking about fighting to save the planet. We just posted something yesterday, I think, today, I don't know. It was a video done by the Wall Street Journal about what's going on in Australia right now. It looks like an apocalypse, all right? And let me tell you, if we don't get our act together as a planet, not just America, you're going to see more and more parts of this world under fire. You're going to see sea levels rising, and major cities like Miami and New Orleans and Charleston, South Carolina, and New York City by the end of this century being underwater. You're going to see hundreds of millions of people around the world being forced to leave their homes because there is no clean water or land to grow their crops. So that is why we have historically opposed all of these pipelines. We need to move yesterday to transform our energy system, not become more dependent on fossil fuel. And when we talk about transforming our energy system, we're talking about creating up to 20 million good-paying jobs. We're talking about making sure that all of our buildings are energy efficient. We're talking about investing significantly in wind and solar. We could save people a whole lot of money on their electric bills, on their fuel bills, by moving towards solar and wind and biofuels and geothermal and other forms of sustainable technology. But this is what I want to say to you. Some of you may agree with me, some of you may not. Donald Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax. Donald Trump is dangerously wrong, and he is threatening the well-being of our kids and future generations. Climate change is an enormous threat to this country and to the world. And as President of the United States, what I understand is I can't do it alone. The United States can't do it alone. We're going to have to reach out to the people in China and Russia and India and Pakistan, countries all over the world, and to tell them that maybe instead of spending $1.8 trillion every year on weapons of destruction designed to kill each other, maybe we should pool our resources and fight our common enemy, which is climate change. Gentleman right here. Stand up if you could. Misty, you got a mic?
Hi, my name is Dalton. I was hoping you could speak to the situation in Iraq over the last couple days and Trump's decision to send more troops to the region.
Well, let me just say this. During the debate over whether to go to war in Iraq or not, I was a member of the House of Representatives from Vermont. And I understood then that going to war in Iraq would destabilize that region and lead to disastrous results. If you want to check out what I said way back when, it's all on YouTube. So I vigorously opposed the war in Iraq, and I am deeply concerned that the entire so-called war on terror has cost us many trillions of dollars that could better be spent on rebuilding our infrastructure and putting money into education and healthcare and the needs of the American people. Donald Trump very often makes foreign policy not by consulting with other countries, not even by consulting with knowledgeable people in his own country, in his own agencies. He makes it precipitously by himself. So I've got real concerns, obviously, about what's going on. We want to make sure that all of our diplomats are safe, and we got to figure out a way to bring the world together to create some degree of stability in Iraq and Afghanistan as well. Okay, Yeah, I got a gentleman there.
Senator, this will be your last question.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Virgil Lastler. Hey, with a Republican-led Senate, how do you believe you can get anything passed?
Okay, good question, Virgil. For a start, I will do everything that I can, I think, successfully to make sure we do not have a Republican-controlled Senate when I'm President of the United States. You know, Republicans will have a lot of money. They will have the support of many, many billionaires. But at the end of the day, what their agenda is about is an agenda that does not work for ordinary Americans, and we will make that very clear. If Mitch McConnell, who is the Republican leader in the Senate, were here today, and I got to give him credit for this, he's fairly honest, what he would say is we need more tax breaks for billionaires, and we need to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and education. Now, I don't know about you, Virgil, but I don't know too many people in America who believe in that agenda. What the American people believe is we should expand Social Security. We should expand funding for health care and education, and we must demand that the billionaires stop paying their fair share of taxes. Now, you asked me the question. I hope very much, and I will be active in making sure that Republicans don't control the Senate. But if they do, this is how you defeat them and how you get a progressive agenda done. When the American people stand up and fight for what they believe in, there will be no stopping them. And I believe, and what you will see in me, and I've said this before, you know, a President of the United States is by definition the commander-in-chief of the military. That's what I will be. That's what a president is. I will also be the organizer-in-chief. In other words, I will be delighted. If I have to come to Iowa, if I have to come to Kentucky, if I have to go to Mississippi, I will be there explaining to the people of those states what is at stake. And I believe that when millions of people stand up for education, for health care, to fight climate change, stand up against racism and sexism, we can create the kind of movement which will put sufficient pressure on any politician and force them to do the right thing. All right, let me conclude. We've got to get moving, got a long trip to go. But I just wanted to say this. Our campaign, picking up on Virgil's question in a way, our campaign is different than other campaigns. Because I'm not here to tell you that Bernie Sanders as president or anybody as president can do it alone. We are taking on enormously powerful special interests. You got 6 banks on Wall Street that own assets equivalent to half of our GDP, over $10 trillion controlled by 6 banks. How's that for power? You got the drug companies who are charging us in some cases 10 times more than the people of other countries for the same exact drug, and they made $69 billion in profits. You got the insurance companies. You got the military-industrial complex. We got the fossil fuel industry. So we got a lot of opposition to an agenda that works for working people. What this campaign is about is to rally the American people by the millions, black and white, Latino, Native American, Asian American, people to stand up for a government and an economy that works for all of us. And when we do that by the millions, you know what? Nobody is going to stop us. Nobody is going to stop us. So I want to thank you all for being out today, and thank you for your support. As Danielle mentioned, the caucus is on February 3rd. And if we believe in justice, it's not good enough to talk about it. We got to act. Let's go out. Let's caucus. Let's defeat Trump. Let us transform this country. Thank you all very much.